Today we begin Iggeres HaKodesh Siman Tes on page 226. As mentioned on previous occasions, it's always exciting to begin a new letter, a new inyan. And this letter is also, it's a little break from what we had previously. Up until the last few letters were somewhat deep in Yanam Chassidus, and this one is more avoidic and simple, and it's not simple in terms of application. It's not simple necessarily to do, but in terms of understanding, and it's pretty good. It's a pretty geschmacka letter. Okay. This letter was written by the Alter Rebbe. This is an earlier letter than the previous letters that we learned. The previous letters that we learned were mostly from the 1790s or even 1800s. This letter, from the historians that tried to estimate when this letter was written in the 1780s. So it's from an earlier period in Alter Rebbe's life, and it's noticeably more poetic than most other letters, which reflects actually the style of the Alter Rebbe earlier on in his life, where had a more poetic style to his writing.
It's about tzedakah.
I'm warning, it's about tzedakah. It's different than the previous letters. The previous letters was the Alter Rebbe more the Alter Rebbe encouraging people to give tzedakah. In this letter, obviously it's written to encourage to give tzedakah, but it's more about the attitude that we're supposed to have towards tzedakah. How does a Yid view giving tzedakah? It's going to give us the Torah perspective and the Chassidus perspective on giving tzedakah. And I want to give you a warning in advance, it's a radical letter.
Radical?
It's a radical letter, yeah. You know, in Chabad Chassidim, every year we do the whole Tanya as part of a chitas. The Tanya is divided into daily portions. The Frierdiker Rebbe, he divided it. He made a Moira Shir. If you look in the back of the Tanya, so you have right behind you have a Moira Shir, one Moira Shir for Ashana Pshuta, one Moira Shir for Ashana Muberes. And we start the Tanya every year on Yitas Kislev, which is considered the Rosh Hashanah for Chassidus. And we conclude the Tanya every year on Yud Ches Kislev. So, I can't say that the average Lubavitcher actually learns in depth the Tanya on a daily basis. But hopefully, when you're not just reading it like we read some other things, we're not going to get into what it is with our mind elsewhere. Hopefully, you're somewhat little focused, at least trying to understand the basic translation of what you're saying. And on a yearly basis, when the time comes and we learn this letter in the year, it gives a tresel, it gives a shake. It's a radical letter in terms of what our approach is supposed to be towards tzedakah. And Alter Rebbe is very, very demanding, has very high expectations of us regarding tzedakah, as we shall see. Not so much in terms of how much we should give tzedakah, but in terms of our approach to tzedakah. As we learn it, we will see you'll see what I'm saying. Siman Tes. The Alter Rebbe begins. Ahuvai, my beloved ones, Achai v'Reyai asher kenafshi. My brothers, my friends, who I love as I love myself. Very, very warm beginning to a letter, maybe to soften the blow that's going to come. Batsi, I have come. Kemaskir u'ma'erer yishenim. I'm coming to remind you and to awaken those who are sleeping. Bitardemas havle havalim. In the slumber of all that is worthless and all that is vain. You know, as Shlomo Melech writes in Kehelas, Havel Avalim, everything is nothing. And there are people who are deeply asleep, involved in all the nothingness of the world, totally asleep from that which is real and that which matters and that which counts. And I've come, so the Alter Rebbe says, I've come to awaken those who are sleeping and to open up the eyes of those who are blind. Yabitu. And I'm encouraging you to look, lirais, and to see, liyais kol yisham v'cheftsam u'magbasam, that your whole desire, all of your aspirations, all your goals should be lochoil bahem chaye rucham, to subsume your life B'makir mayim chayim. In the source of living waters, Chayei Chaim, the life of all life. Kol yemei chayehem, all the days of your life. Remember I told you about the poetic nature of this letter. Min nefesh va'ad basar, everything that involves, whether it's spiritual, whether it's physical, everything should be for one intention, which is to subsume our lives in Chayei HaChaim, in the source of all life in Hashem. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shakol niyeh b'dvarei. There's a cliche that Yiddishkeit is not a religion. It's a way of life. Now there's a reason why cliches are cliches. Sometimes we get tired of cliches. I speak different places and I'm always reminded, stay away from cliches. But what makes something cliche? The reason why something becomes a cliche is because something is true and it resonates, and therefore it's been repeated many times to the point that people get tired of hearing it. But it doesn't change the fact that it's true, which is why it became a cliche in the first place. It's true that Yiddishkeit isn't a religion. A religion means that there are certain parts of my life, there are certain moments of my life that I dedicate to Hashem. So I have my life, I eat, I sleep, I work, I exercise, I go on vacation, but there are certain times of the day when I stop and I will pray, I give tzedakah, I do certain mitzvahs. That's a religion. Yiddishkeit is a way of life, because in Yiddishkeit there's no such thing as, I'm contributing certain times or moments of my day to Hashem, but rather in Yiddishkeit, everything that I do is about Hashem. It's a way of life. Every single thing. It's not only that everything I do, I look in Shulchan Aruch beforehand to see, am I allowed to do it, am I not allowed to do it, which obviously a Yid has to do that, and has to make sure that what you're doing is al pi Torah. But it's much more than that. Yiddishkeit be'emes is that everything I do is part of my service of Hashem. From the moment I wake up in the morning until I go to sleep at night, and including also when I'm sleeping at night, everything is sachakol. What is everything? Everything is just part of my avodas Hashem. And that's what the Alter Rebbe is encouraging over here. The Alter Rebbe is asking, he's saying to his Chassidim, I want you to wake up from your slumber, your sleep in Havli Ha'olam, and realize that everything has to be part of your avodas Hashem. Everything has to be part of your effort to connect with Hashem, to unite with Hashem, to subsume your neshama in Hashem. And the Alter Rebbe continues, Dahainu, and this means Kol Mili Da'alma, all worldly matters, V'iske Parnasa, and when a person is involved in their career and their livelihood, Lo yiyu ke'elu da'avdin l'germayu. You should not be like those who do these things for themselves. When you go to your office, when you go to your job, it's not about you. It's not about your need to make money. V'lo yiyeh Beis Yisrael k'chol hagoyim. And Beis Yisrael, the Yidden, should not be like all the nations. Dizonin umefarnesin umoikrin l'nashayu. These are words borrowed from the Ksuba. That they sustain and they give parnasa, and they respect their wives, uvenayu, and their children me'ahava, simply because they love them. No, Yidden don't do that. We'll do this a little more inside further, and then we will unpack this. Ki mi ka'amcha Yisrael goy echad ba'aretz ksiv. It is written, Mi ka'amcha Yisrael, goy echad ba'aretz. What does it mean? Who is like your nation, Yisrael, goy echad ba'aretz? We know these are the words that are written in Hashem's tefillin. Chazal tell us, what does it mean, goy echad ba'aretz? Literally, goy echad ba'aretz means one nation on this earth. The Alter Rebbe says there's a deeper pshat here. Dahainu shegam binyani aretz. Even when they're involved in aretz, even when they're ba'aretz, they're goy echad. Lo yifridu yipardu. They never separate themselves from echad. Goy echad ba'aretz, even when they're aretz in the world, even when they're in their office, in their job, they're in the shopping mall, wherever they may be, they're echad. They're connected to the echad. And chas v'shalom lahoid edu sheker chas v'shalom b'krishma erev v'beker. Chas v'shalom, that one should say false testimony. When we say krishma in the morning, in the night, beinayim seguris, when we have our eyes are closed, and we say Hashem echad. And what does Hashem echad mean? It doesn't mean that there's one God. Hashem echad means that we know the Aleph is Hashem, and the Ches. We say that Hashem is one in the 7 heavens and the earth. That's the Ches. The 8, the Dal is the Ruchas in the 4 different directions of the world. Hashem is the only one in the heavens above and the earth below. And when the blind people open their eyes, in other words, when we take off our hands from our eyes after we say Krishma, he is ayif einach, we take a blink, we blink, ve'einanu chas v'shalom, the whole echad is gone. And that's Eidul Sheker. If we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and we have our eyes closed and we're thinking about Achdus Hashem, and then when we open up our eyes and we give a blink, it's all gone in the blink of an eye. It's Eidul Sheker. Echad means, the idea of Yiddishkeit is, and Goy Echad Ba'aretz is that there's ein od milvado, there's nothing other than Hashem. And everything is about Hashem, and everything is about my avodas Hashem, and everything is about connection to Hashem, and nothing is about me. And if I'm working, and the purpose of my work is in order to be able to feed my wife and my children, and why? Because I love them. That's a selfish endeavor. Because why do I love my wife? Why do I love my children? Because they're an extension of me, and they're an extension of my self-love. I love myself, so I love my wife, so I love my children. They're what make me whole. They're my nuclear family. Is there anything wrong with that? Is there anything wrong with loving one's wife and children and therefore going to work to be mefarnes? No, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's the way of the goyim, and it's not bad and it's not evil. But the difference between a goy and a yid is that a goy, their goal is to be a good person. And part of being a good person is loving their wife and children and therefore providing for them. And being a yid is not about being a good person. Being a yid is about being a godly person. Being a yid is about goy echad ba'aretz, that everything that a person does is about the Eibishter, and nothing is about oneself. And therefore, now, here is what is appropriate for us as Yidden. And note the words, appropriate. This is what passes for a Yid. And that's, Al Rebbe isn't saying that the other way is bad or it's evil, but we're higher. We're higher than that. It's like, in Chinuch, the best words that a parent can tell a child is asepasnisht. When a child does something which is inappropriate, instead of saying that was a bad thing to do, and for sure not to say you're a bad child, we say sepasnisht. It's inappropriate. What's the implication of that? You're above that. You're bigger than that. The Rebbe says, yeah, the whole world, everyone, they go to the office and they go to work, and the purpose of their work is in order to provide and sustain for their families. But for us, what is appropriate for us is something else. For us, it's appropriate. For you, it's appropriate that everything that we're involved with in the worldly matters is loy ligirmayu. Nothing is for ourselves. Ki'im, rather, lahachyis nafsheis chelki elokus, to sustain and give life to the neshamas around us, ulamalish machzirehem, and to fill their needs, bechesed chinam, not because of any particular reason, but with a chesed chinam, with an undeserved chesed. And why? Shebozeh anu midamin hatsura li yitzram. This is the way how we become similar to Hashem Echad. Asher chesed keilu kol hayoim, that Hashem does chesed all day long. Chesed shel emes, the ultimate chesed, the chesed of truth. What is the chesed that Hashem does? Lahachye so'ilam u'meloye, the Eibishter gives life to this world and everything that's in it. B'chol rega v'rega, at every single moment. So therefore, part of my connection to Hashem or in the Lashon of Chazal, Mahu Chanun, Afata Chanun, Mahu Rachum, Afata Rachum. If I want to be similar to Hashem, so just like Hashem does chesed, so I also have to do chesed. So why do I do work? In order to be able to make money, to do chesed, and to be similar to Hashem. I am going to channel Hashem's kindness through me. Hashem does chesed, I am going to do chesed. I am going to find some neshamas that need to be sustained, and I am going to sustain them. So my entire work is part of my avodas Hashem. In a deeper way, this is a larger, it's a mindset of, again, we spoke about this earlier today in the lesson of, I have my life, and I go to work, and I eat, and even if I do things l'shem shamayim, it's still kol masecha yu l'shem shamayim. It's right. I work. I want to make money. I want to have a nice house. I would like to eat. I want to, and ultimately also, I give tzedakah, I eat kosher, and even I use the food that I eat in order to have koyach to learn Torah. But there's this divide. There's when I go to daven, when I go to shul, or when I do a mitzvah, when I shake lulav, when I eat matzah, I'm doing that because Hashem wants me to do it. And then there's all the things that I want to do. And Alter Rebbe is saying, Goy echad ba'aretz, and this idea of Hashem echad, and not having this divide, means that you wake up in the morning and say, Hashem, okay, what do I have to do today? Oh, you want me to go to work? I'll go to work. You want me to eat? I'm eating. In that sense, there's no difference between doing a mitzvah and going to work. They're both mitzvahs. Why am I going to work? Because Hashem wants me to. Why? Because Hashem does chesed, I'm doing chesed. It's not about me. It's not about me. It's not about the people who I love. It's all part of my avodas Hashem. I might in the past have mentioned the story. They say a story about there were two chassidim, Kotzker chassidim, and they were incredible masmidim. They were chavrusas. They learned together, and they would learn many hours every day, every night. And there was a person who was very impressed by these two chassidim, and he was observing them for a long time. And he noticed that when it came Erev Pesach, an hour or two before Yom Tov, so one of them turns to the other, closes the Gemara, and says, "Okay, you have to stop because it's time to go eat vechera, time to go eat supper." Vechera, yeah. He kept on observing them. A few months later, it's Erev Yom Kippur. Again, even Erev Yom Kippur, they're learning, but it comes like 2 hours before. And one of them closes the Gemara and turns to the other and says, "No, it's time. We have to stop because it's time to go daven Ma'ariv." So this guy, he couldn't hold himself back. He wondered to himself, "I don't understand. 6 months ago was Pesach. He said that you had to stop to go eat vechera. No Yid eats vechera on Pesach. On Pesach, we have a seder. We don't have vechera. We don't have supper." And you said, and now you're saying that you want to go daven Ma'ariv. All Yidden, when it comes Yom Kippur, we go daven Kol Nidrei. And they responded, they said that in Kotsk we were taught that every vechera is a seder and every Ma'ariv is Kol Nidrei.
No difference.
It's a very high madriga where the seder, every supper is a seder. In other words, tonight I turn to Hashem and say, "Hashem, what do you want me to do?" Tonight He says, "I want you to eat matzah and butter and koyrech and lean on your side." Eibishter, that's what I'm going to do. And then a week, 2 weeks later, 6 o'clock, Hashem, what do you want me to do? I want you to go eat a polka and a piece of kugel in order to be able to have koyrech learn. Eibishter, I'm there. It's hineni. It's that hineni which is the ultimate equalizer. Because every single thing that I do is only about serving the Eibishter. I go to work to serve the Eibishter. So goyim, and that's what I was saying over here. Goyim, they go to work nice. I mean, we're talking about the good goyim. We're talking about the nice goyim. Why do they go to work? Because they have a family, and taka, they're supposed to have a family in their mitzvah. They're commanded l'shavas yitzara. They're commanded to have children. And we're very happy when goyim go to work in order to be able to support their families. Adarabah, that's yishuv ha'elam. That's the way the world is sustained. But ultimately, that's for a goy, that's not for a yid. A yid is goy echad ba'aretz. A yid, everything he does is about the Eibishter. If not, then the whole shema is a sheker. You're saying Echad, Hashem Echad. You're saying everything is the Eibishter, and then you go to work and the Eibishter is not there. It's not the Eibishter. This is about you.
I have a question. You're saying here that Hashem do Chesed Shel Emet. So why we call when we go to Levaya or go to the Med, it's also Chesed Shel Emet?
Right, because Chesed Shel Emet means that we don't expect anything in return. Hashem also is not expecting anything in return. He didn't create the world because he expects anything in return. It's the ultimate Chesed that he does. So it's similar in that way. Now says the Alter Rebbe, Rak only. Okay, so I have to go to work. It's not about me. It's not about my wife. It's not about my kids. It's because I have to give tzedakah. This is the perspective that Alter Rebbe is giving us here. I'm going to work because I have to give tzedakah. Alter Rebbe says, hold on 1 second. Rak she'ishte yuvanav shel adman koidman lachel al pi haTorah. You want to know who to give tzedakah to?
Charity starts at home.
Charity starts at home. Yeah, so al pi Torah, you go to work and give tzedakah. Now you say to who do you give tzedakah first? The first ones you have to support are ishtei banav, your wife, because that's what it says in the ksuba. Banav, because al pi Torah a parent has to support the children. Koidman, they come first. And now you should just know that the next 2 lines, from chutz until the period, 2 lines later, is not in any other print in Tanya besides for the Tanya that you have in front of you. In all the previous Tanyas, what we call the old print Tanyas, these 2 lines weren't there, and you had to look in the back, and the Luach HaTikun. The Luach HaTikun added in. So there are many Lubavitchers who go through Tanya every single year, but if they're using the old print Tanya, which is any Tanya that was printed before around 5 years ago, and if they were not aware of the fact that in the Luach HaTikun in the back is corrected, they might be completely unaware of these bombshell lines that the Alter Rebbe is going to write over here.
How it got deleted to begin?
I don't know, but let's read the lines and maybe see why it got deleted, okay? Chutz, besides. In other words, the Alter Rebbe says again, the Alter Rebbe says, your wife and children take precedence over everyone else. Besides, mitzadikim shebader, the tzadikim in the generation, shehein koidmin lebanav, they come before your own children. Supporting tzaddikim comes before supporting your own children.
No ishta?
Obviously, if it comes before your children, sure, supporting your children. I know, yeah. But that's a kal v'chomer. V'tzaddikim shebe'eretz Yisrael koidmin l'tzaddikim shebe'chutz la'aretz. Tzaddikim in Eretz Yisrael, they take precedence over tzaddikim in chutz la'aretz. And why? Now we are a little also understanding what Alter Rebbe is driving at over here, because the purpose of this letter was to fundraise money for the tzaddikim in Eretz Yisrael. Levad mezois, besides for the fact lehinichu k'moisan b'chutz la'aretz, besides the fact that they did not leave behind anyone in chutz la'aretz that's on their level, on their caliber, vidal. So therefore, for sure, the tzaddikim in Eretz Yisrael come before the tzaddikim in chutz la'aretz if they're of the same level. So then we give tzaddikim in Eretz Yisrael first. La'achas kama v'kama, the Alter Rebbe is saying that the tzaddikim in Eretz Yisrael, he's talking about Reb Mendel, the pre-tzaddik, Reb Nachman Mendel of Haradak, and others who went with him. They did not leave anyone of their level over here, so definitely they take precedence. Now, just to be clear, what Alter Rebbe is saying over here is fully supported by halacha and by Shulchan Aruch. This is, although it sounds very radical, and it is very radical, the idea of the fact that Ishtei Banav Koidman Lakel Al Pi Torah is in Shulchan Aruch, as you said, as it says, what's the lashon hapasuk? Ki yeh b'cha evyon mi'achecha mi'aniyecha. So achecha Koidman, that your relatives come before everyone else, and in Shulchan Aruch in Yeridei Taka says that Rabbi Muvak, that your primary teacher comes before your own father in terms of taking care of them. And the Trumas Hadeshan says that the Gadol Hadoyer, the Tzaddik Hadoyer, has the din of everyone's Rabbi Mufak. So even if you can say, well, that's a big Tzaddik, but he never taught me anything, the Gadol Hadoyer has the din of the Rabbi Mufak of everyone. So Alter Rebbe is saying over here, it's fully supported by halacha, which is, it's radical stuff. He's saying over here that ultimately we go to work in order to give tzedakah. So this is an incredible understanding. You go to work to make money, but what's the money for? The money is all for tzedakah. Nothing is for you, by the way. Nothing is for you.
So where's the Ma'aser money come? We take Ma'aser off.
That's a good question. It's a good question. Chassidim were never very careful about Ma'aser. Meaning, Ma'aser and Chomesh is the minimum. If you're able to give more, you gave more. There's the understanding, which is that everything that you have is for chesed. Okay, now, but I can walk around and I can start just handing out money. No, so here we have the Torah gives us priorities in terms of our tzedakah. But everything is tzedakah. Even what I give my wife and children is also tzedakah. So it's a certain perspective on my money and what my money is for, as opposed to the popular perspective, which is, okay, my wife and my children, I have to support. And myself, I have to support. And then, if I have any money left over, I give tzedakah. He's throwing that whole perspective in the garbage. No, you're misunderstanding the whole thing. No. All the money you have is tzedakah. It's all tzedakah. Now, however, in tzedakah, you should know their priorities. Priority number one is, obviously, yourself. Chayecha koidmen. But after you take care of your basic needs, the next thing that you have is your wife and your children you have to take care of. Sorry?
So how can you separate the two?
Okay, beseder. Maybe that's talk why you have to.
So how could the tzaddikim come before the wife?
So maybe tzaddikim become before yourself also. He doesn't even. It's interesting that Rebbe doesn't even talk about yourself over here. But again, this is something. Again, this is not a chiddush of the Alter Rebbe. Actually, the Alter Rebbe is putting it in simple words. But again, this is all supported by halacha, where it says over there that your Rabbi Muva comes before your own father. And by the way, your obligation to your father halachically is more than your obligation to your children. Mitzad, because of Kibbud Av. So everything that we have is tzedakah. Now there are priorities. So that you have Ishtei Banav, and then there is, and then the Alter Rebbe says, tzaddikim come even before your own wife and children. Tzaddikim shebedoir, what's the lashon? Tzaddikim shebedoir come before your own family. And that's because of tzedakah priorities. If we view all our money that we have as us just being the funnel from Hashem, so then it all makes sense. Then I've given him, I'm Hashem's treasurer, and I am over here. The whole purpose of me going to work is to make money. In the words of the Alter Rebbe, l'dam is tzura liyitzra, to be mahu rachum avatar rachum. So all the money I have now, I look at the Torah. What are my priorities in terms of what do I give?
But how much? He doesn't indicate your priorities. What about the amount?
I understand, but the perspective that the Alter Rebbe is giving over here, it's almost like addressed automatically. It's everything.
So you have nothing left?
There's the Mittler Rebbe talks about in a Maimer.
How do you apportion it? What's the fractions here?
The Mittler Rebbe in a Maimer talks about, the pasuk says, "Bar Avram Avinu ki daitiv, lamana sheitzav es banav es beisav acharav v'shamru es derech Hashem lasais tzedakah u'mishpat." What's the connection between tzedakah and mishpat? So the Mittler Rebbe says the connection is that true tzedakah requires mishpat. You have to make a judgment. You have to make an honest judgment. And the honest judgment is, how much do I really need? And the rest you give away. So the tzedakah has to be preceded by a mishpat. And it has to be honest, because sometimes, what is a necessity, what's actually a need, and what's a luxury. Again, this is not something which is mandated al pi halacha. 100%, if you want to go according to halacha, then you have the dinners that you have to, chiyuv is meiser, and if you want a mitzvah mal mufcher is chomesh. But the Alter Rebbe is giving us here a deeper perspective, a perspective of Hashem Echad, that when a person approaches life as not being about himself, that entire life is about Avodas Hashem, so you understand, I made money, what's it for? For me? Who am I? It's not about me. Going to work is part of my Avodas Hashem. Why am I making money? To be Hashem's emissary here in the world and to give tzedakah. Okay, I have to give tzedakah. Who's giving tzedakah? Who gets my tzedakah? My wife and children come first, because Al Pi Torah, they come first. Chayecha koidmen. I understand. You're having a tough time digesting this whole thing.
I can't see how you.
Right, and that's why, if you remember, I began this lesson, this letter, saying that we're going to be talking radical things. And this is the radical nature of the letter that I was talking about. It's difficult for a lot of people to wrap their heads around it, because for many people, the way we are taught Yiddishkeit and the way we view Yiddishkeit is there is this divide. It's not a Hashem Echad way. I know that's putting it in severe words, but that is, there's my life and my interests and my needs, and I have to take care of all of those things. And then after that, also I give some little tzedakah, and also I go after that. Also I go to shul and I daven, and I have a shir in my learning. There's chetze lachem and chetze lashem. And comes Chassidus says there's no chetze lachem.
If I don't take care of myself, I can't take care.
You have to take care of yourself, but why? But why are you taking care of yourself?
Okay.
Because the Torah says,
Right, and you can't take care of anybody else unless you take care of yourself first.
Very good.
So,
you're having 100%. We didn't. That's what Dr. Rebbe is saying. You're having an issue with the one part about the tzaddikim. That's what your issue is.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why it was taken out.
Anybody that you're saying comes before your wife and your children, how could that be?
Okay, so let's.
The wife is like you.
So in a chanami, if you're saying comes before your wife, it probably means it comes before you also. I can't imagine that it means that you put yourself and you give yourself food and you say your wife and your children you can't have, and I'm sending money to the Rebbe. I don't think that's what it means. I don't think that's what it means.
I hope not.
Yeah.
Stop it then.
Right. Okay, but let's leave the tzaddikim part behind. And I find it interesting because had we stopped before the tzaddikim, in other words, had we been using an old print Tanya, then you wouldn't have had this issue. Because the old print Tanya, all it said was, what it says is that everything that we have is tzedakah. And the wife and children come first. So you're good with that. Your issue is that extra step which the Alter Rebbe took, which interestingly was deleted from all the Tanyas, and I don't know why. And maybe because it is a little too radical for some people to digest this idea that tzaddikim actually come before even one's own mishpacha. Yeah. I think you need to have a little of a...
How's the tzaddikim apportioned there to them?
I think you need to have a little of a chassidish...
Another tzaddik.
Chassidish hergish. What's the chassidish... feeling to be able to appreciate this idea. That the Rebbe comes before everything. And there were chassidim that way. There were chassidim, I know, there were chassidim, the Frierdiker Rebbe, who his deal was that he sent his paycheck to the Rebbe. And then whatever he needed, he would come to the Rebbe and say, Rebbe, I need this. I need to buy supper tonight. I need some money for this. But his paycheck, whatever money he had, once that was sent to the Rebbe. That was the way... And he still everyone to do that. He said, that's the way it is. Whatever you have to give to the Rebbe. Then you need something, you go to the Rebbe and say, Rebbe, I need this.
You don't find so many people like this.
No, you don't find so many people like that. That's definitely true. But there's a certain, and you have to understand also, the Rebbe is not a masochist. The Rebbe is not going to take, if to also appreciate that we're not dealing with people who are going to live on the a Rebbe is a tzaddik. He's not going to live on the cheshbon of someone else starving. But in mind, in theory, if it's all about Avodas Hashem, then we understand this idea that the tzaddik hader is the ultimate tzedakah, even more so than your own kids. Now, does that mean that the kids starve? I don't think that's what it means. I don't think it means that a person should allow their kids to starve. It's more about a perspective of how we look at things. Once we understand that everything, all the money I have is for Hashem. So what are my priorities? Am I going to buy a nice Shabbos suit for my kid? Or am I going to, or if the Rebbe needs something, the answer is you give it to the Rebbe. We're not talking here in halachas of pikuach nefesh over here. We're talking about in terms of the priorities of understanding, if all my money is given to me by Hashem for tzedakah, whatever I give my kids is tzedakah, what I give my wife is tzedakah, what I give myself is tzedakah, and what I give also to, so there's these priorities.
According to this, every tzaddik has to be very rich. If everybody will give.
Right.
What is the tzaddik? Does the tzaddik give tzedakah also?
But what does the tzaddik do with the money at the end of the day?
Giving him back.
Well, they sent the money to Eretz Yisrael. You think the Mendel Haradakar was living in a palace in Eretz Yisrael?
No.
What are they? How many stories of tzaddikim have you heard?
Nothing.
The Divrei Chaim famously never went to sleep at night. We mentioned this in the past. If there was any money in the house, he had to give it out to tzedakah. One night he couldn't fall asleep. Pasha couldn't fall asleep. He realized there has to be somewhere hiding in the house some money. He went, he searched, he found it, he gave it to a poor person, and he fell asleep. Again, if you have this imagination of a Rebbe Taka who is sitting on a gold throne, and he's, bring me more money. No, that's not enough. I need tomorrow. I need steak for supper. So then Taka becomes but if you understand what a Rebbe is, it's a different story. What's the Rebbe doing with his money, anyways? The Rebbe's house, our Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe. So he lived in a nice house on President Street.
Big mansion.
Yeah,
From the outside, wasn't it?
It's a nice big house.
Yeah.
And no one ever went into the house. You know, the Rebbe and Rebbetzin, very, very private people. Very, aside from, few people, close people, no one ever went into the Rebbe's house. First time when there was public access to the house was in when the Rebbetzin passed away in 1988. So the Rebbe sitting Shiva. So the Rebbe sitting Shiva. That's the first time Chassidim were able to go into the Rebbe's house. Nachem. And then they saw they were in the kitchen. It's from the 1950s. The kitchen wasn't. Nothing was changed.
Like
what?
a museum.
You're old man. The mansions are old.
No. But nothing was
Changed.
changed or remodeled or anything. The same replaced the same seats, right? Yeah, you're there in the house. You saw it. Yeah. In other words, and the Rebbe sat on many millions of dollars, but it wasn't used to reupholster the chairs in his house. It wasn't. And after the Rebbetzin passed away, the Rebbe moved into his office in 770, where he was for the next few years. He slept there, and in his office, and you ever in the Rebbe's office, you know the size of and that's where the Rebbe lived.
No, but we keep a bed in there.
Well, they brought a bed. Yeah. If tzaddikim needed money, and that's why you give them the money, they're probably not tzaddikim. In other words, if they have the need and the desire for it's because a tzaddik is above and beyond money. It's not, and the money they use is for Klal Yisrael, and it's the help. And
the Rebbe is not the example because all the dollars he gave all his life,
and there was
waiting in line. So this is the money he got, he gave. But other Rebbeim, other tzaddikim, I don't know.
As I said, if you feel that the Rebbe, if this Rebbe who you're calling a Rebbe is someone who is living a life of luxury and living it up on the Cheshbon of the Chassidim, then maybe Taka, it's a different story. But the real Rebbes aren't that way. I'm not just talking about Chabad. Real Rebbes are people who are higher than money. That's not money doesn't play a role in their lives. And whatever money they have is meant for the Klal. Yeah. Now there are certain Rebbes who also had a derech. The Ruzhner had a derech of Ashirus. Certain Rebbes, that's a different story. The income economy. Okay. And it's also not because they valued money. It was a certain type of avodas Hashem. What's interesting is, the halacha is that that even a poor person has to give tzedakah. It's Patan Shulchan Aruch. Now, a poor person can't be expected to give meiser, but a certain amount, I think maybe a shekel a year or something, a certain amount, even the poor person has to give. Now, I hope I'm not going to sound insensitive when I say this. We don't really today know what a poor person is. The poor person that the Shulchan Aruch talks about is not the poor person of today.
You're talking about wretched poverty.
Baruch Hashem, we live in a Malchus Shel Chesed, and
subsidies.
The subsidies and the safety net and everything and the Irgunim. I hope I'm not being naive when I'm saying this. I don't think anyone's in danger of starving today or starving tomorrow. Here in the United States, unless you don't want to put out your hand, but anyone who wants, it's not, there are people who are poor, but everything is relative. And some people can't afford this, can't afford that. They want to, and there's taka, and I don't want to sound insensitive to people taka who are facing difficult economic times, and obviously tuition in yeshiva is expensive these days. But Shulchan Aruch is talking about people who literally had nothing.
Like in Europe.
Yeah.
Couldn't afford to buy shoes for the children.
Couldn't afford to buy shoes to the kids.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Couldn't afford to buy food. People didn't know what it means to eat chicken for a whole year. So we're talking about, and even such a person has to give tzedakah also. Again, a minimal amount. You might want to say even a symbolic amount, but even such a person also has to give tzedakah. And the question is why? What's the purpose of tzedakah? If the purpose of tzedakah is that the poor should be provided for, then why are you making a poor person give tzedakah? And by the way, this poor person has no money. So how does this poor person have whatever he or she has? Because someone gave them tzedakah. So if you're making this poor person give tzedakah, what you're really doing is making the rich person give them a little extra tzedakah for them to give away. What's the purpose of that? Let the rich person not give it and give it to... But if we understand the idea of tzedakah is that Al Rebbe says that every single yid needs to be Mahu chanun, avata chanun, mahu rachum, avata rachum. The idea of being the channel of the Eibishter's chesed, and we go, the ability to be able to do chesed chinam, as Hashem does chesed chinam. So because you're a poor person, you shouldn't have that opportunity to ma'ata chanun, mahu chanun, avata chanun. So this is a very important nekuda. So again, we can bring about this for a long time. It's not, as I said, this letter, if you remember, I started off today's lesson, today's shir saying, it wasn't really encouraging people to give tzedakah. Or at least not yet. It's more about the perspective and attitude we have towards tzedakah. That it's not, oh, I have money, and most of the money I keep for myself. Some of the money I give off to tzedakah. No, you have no money. You have no money. Because you went to work only because to serve the Eibishter and to make money to do chesed. Everything is tzedakah. Every single cent you're going to give is going to be tzedakah. The question is who? Now you have to look in Torah to find out where your priorities are. And it's a life changer because it means that your whole life is Eibishter. You go to work because it's a mitzvah and you're serving the Eibishter. B'chol drachecha de'eyu, the ultimate way.
It's really what Hashem gave you, make you as a shaliach. The whole money that you have to know how to distribute.
Exactly.
That's it.
And there's no difference between your children and everyone else. Yeah, there's a difference practically that they take priority. But in terms of your perspective, I'm giving my kids because the Eibishter wants me to give tzedakah to them. I'm giving them because the Eibishter wants me to give tzedakah to them. It's all tzedakah. It's all part of my mitzvah. It's all part of my shlichus over here on this world. Now, this perspective obviously is going to change the amount that you give. If that's your perspective, you're certainly going to give more than if your perspective otherwise. But that's almost like a fringe benefit. That's a side benefit. That's not the nekuda. The nekuda is understanding that Goy Yisrael, Goy Echad Ba'aretz demands that whatever I'm doing, it's about the Eibishter. Work is about the Eibishter also. And when I feed my family, it's because the Eibishter wants me to. Not because I love them. Go and feed their family because they love them. I feed my family because that's what the Eibishter wants me to do. And because this is the way I'm similar to the Eibishter. Now this leads us into another conversation, a related conversation, about Hashgacha Pratis. And this Sunday is a big day, is Gimel Tammuz. And I want to talk about a certain nekuda which the Rebbe has a very big kochen. When we talk about Hashgacha Pratis, for what does Hashgacha Pratis mean to the average person? It means that whatever happened, or whatever is happening, I could feel good about it. Why? Because it's Hashgacha Pratis. So sometimes something happens, like, wow, look at that Hashgacha Pratis. This happened, that happened, and this, look what happened, it ended up, this end product was unbelievable. You saw the Yad Hashem. So Hashgacha Pratis in this case brings about a beautiful result. Sometimes something difficult happens, and we don't have an explanation, we don't have an answer, we don't know why it happened. And what do we say? Why? Because Hashgacha Pratis, right? So even if I don't understand, I comfort myself with the thought that since the Eibishter directs the world, so therefore this also must be good. The Rebbe's understanding of Hashgacha Pratis goes much beyond that. Hashgacha Pratis is not meant to comfort you. It's meant also to demand of you. Whatever happened, whatever the circumstance is, it's not just that you should look around and say, oh, it must be good because it's from Hashem. You have to look around and say, oh, Hashem created these circumstances and put me in these particular circumstances. What does that demand of me? It's a different perspective. Understanding that Hashem controls the world and Hashem maneuvers everything and arranges everything leads you to the understanding that obviously that there's a message here for me, there's something for me to do. My wife's uncle was Rabbi Gershon Ber Jacobson Alav Shalom. I don't know if any of you remember the Allgemeiner Journal, the newspaper in Yiddish. So he was the editor of the Allgemeiner Journal.
How's he related?
He was my wife's uncle. And in the 80s, it was shortly before Rosh Hashanah, one year he had a mini heart attack or mini stroke, I don't remember. Something happened. And he was taken to the hospital, and he was admitted to the hospital. And his son went by the Rebbe. The Rebbe was giving out lekach then. It was the beginning of the year. His son, Simon Jacobson, I don't know if you're familiar with him. And the Rebbe told him, tell your father that he's there in the hospital for a reason. He has a mission in the hospital, and when he finishes his mission, he'll be released from the hospital.
What is the mission?
And then the Rebbe's secretary, Rabbi Chadakov, also visited him in the hospital and said, the Rebbe wants to know whether you're doing your mission or not. The Rebbe is saying this. You're in the hospital. You think you're in the hospital because you had a heart attack? Yeah, that's the Chetzoniistic reason. But what's the Hashgacha Pratis over here? Why does the Eibishter want you to be in the hospital? There's a job for you to do. And once you finish that job, you're going to leave, because that's the real reason why you're there. And Taka, he went around and he was speaking to different doctors and nurses and patients and speaking to them about Yiddishkeit. And years later, he said that he still heard from people who he met in the hospital the impact that he had on them down in the hospital. He had a mission over there in the hospital. But that's what I mean by Hashgacha Pratis being Mechayev. Understanding that the Yad Hashem directs everything demands something of you. I want to tell you another story. This is a story that happened in 1979. There was a Neshei Ubenois Chabad convention, and it was in Michigan, in Detroit, Michigan. The women went, this was during Shvat, and on the way back, there's a bunch of women who went from New York, went to this convention. A woman came from all over the country. There was a huge snowstorm, and all the planes were grounded, and the women were stuck there in Michigan. So immediately they called up the Rebbe. Why did this happen? What did we do wrong? That we're so inconvenienced, and what should we do? And I'm sorry for taking out my phone in the middle of class, but I have the copy of the Rebbe's response on my phone. I'd like to read it to you. And this is what the Rebbe wrote. I'm going to read the translation into English. The Baal Shem Tov's teaching that every occurrence contains a directive in serving Hashem is a topic that has been spoken of and discussed at length many, many times. I am sure that you too have given speeches on this topic. Yet now, when an incident has happened to you, i.e. you're being delayed in Detroit by the New York snowstorm, whose occurrence has a clear meaning and purpose, you seek to attach to the incident most distorted interpretations. For example, perhaps the delay is designed to distress us, God forbid, or how are we going to return home, etc. Anything but the simple and obvious interpretation that you should. The simple and obvious reason for the delay is, it is possible to disseminate Torah and mitzvahs to a far greater degree than was accomplished during the convention. You are therefore being granted the merit, through the snow which descends from heaven, of completing the above task with an extraordinary abundance and storm. In other words, the message you have to take from the storm. You have to make a shturim, intensity of Judaism, similar to the extraordinary abundance of the snowstorm. Your efforts in completing the convention's task of disseminating Torah and mitzvahs should be extended to the city, the airport, publicity in the newspapers, etc. So the Rebbe is, I don't understand. I keep on talking about Hashgacha Pratis. You probably have given speeches on Hashgacha Pratis. When something like this happens, suddenly you want to know what Hashem is against you, and you want to know why can't you return home? It's obvious. You still have a job there. Why are you there? Why is there a snowstorm? Because you have a job. Go do the job. Spread Torah, spread mitzvahs in the airport, in the city, in the newspapers, and they did that. And they went home a few days later. But the whole perspective of Hashgacha Pratis as demanding of you. It's easy to say, there's a snowstorm, I can't go to New York. Hashgacha Pratis is Gam Tzulu Tova. I'm not going to be distressed. I won't be upset about it. So what I'll do, I'll go to my hotel room and I'll go to sleep. That's one way of looking at Hashgacha Pratis. But the Rebbe says Hashgacha Pratis is something else entirely. Hashgacha Pratis. Now, we have to understand that Hashem directs everything, even that which is natural and normal. Over here we have two stories. One that sometimes you look and say, "Oh wow, this is Hashgacha. There's a snowstorm. All the planes are stuck." What's the message over here? It's like almost like calling out to you. Or a person was sent to the hospital. There's unusual events. We have to understand that Hashgacha Pratis is not only in the unusual events, but also in the usual events. And to bring out this point, I'd like to read for you a letter from the Frierdiker Rebbe from Tes Zayin Elul Tafshin Ches, which is 1948. So the Frierdiker Rebbe writes in a letter to someone, you write to me that Rab Aaron Zucker, I don't know who it is, Rab Aaron Sheyichiyat Zucker, that he had to go for business purposes to Tangier in Morocco. So he spoke over there to the Rav that they should start learning Tanya in the city over there. So the Rebbe writes over here, certainly that's something of the sort, and this pu'ula is very, very good. However, you made a mistake in the way you were manaseach, in the way you wrote your letter. You wrote over there that he went to Tangier for business purposes, meaning that the main reason why he went there was for his business. That's the Iker. And Derech Hagav, by the way, when he was there, he spoke about learning Tanya.
Should get the other way around.
Yeah. No, the emes is that the Iker, the fact that his neshama was eicher to be in that place, was to be misader inyan of Torah. And it came down in the levush of having to go for business, as explained in Chassidus, the soid habirurim, the secret behind avedus habirurim, and elevating the gashmis. That's the Kudah. Which is, so no one says, oh, I'm here in this city because I went on a business trip. Oh, what's Hashgacha Pratas net? I'm here for business. But that's if your perspective is that everything is, you make your own choices and you decided you're going to the city. No, if you're in a city, it's not your choice, it's not your decision. Mashem mitzadi gever keinanu. When you're in a certain place, it's the Eibishter put you there. And if the Eibishter put you there, the operative question is why you're there. And you think you're there to make some money, to make some business? No. There's a reason. There's something in Torah, something in mitzvahs. There's a chizuk that has to be made in this place, which you couldn't have made where you are, and that's why you're there. And Hashgacha Pratis demands of you to actually search out what is the reason that I'm here. What's the message that I'm getting from the Eibishter and why I'm here.
It could even be as simple as making a bracha in a certain.
It could be. It could be. But I think the Rebbe definitely picked it up a notch and was trying to figure out what is necessary in, what can you do to help the Yidden over there in that place. The very famous, the founder of OK, of the Kashrus, Rabbi Bar Levi. There's a book that they put out about him, a biography called The Kosher Inspector, I think. And one of the big things over there is that wherever he'd go, he was a Lubavitcher, he'd write to the Rebbe beforehand. And he said, the Rebbe made it very clear to me, kashrus is important, but that's only one of the reasons why I'm in a place. That's never the only reason. Whenever he went to a place, he would check the mikveh over there, and he would find out what's going on. And in the book, you have countless stories of the impact he had on different communities, even though he didn't. That's not the reason why he was going there, but the understanding. So he has to go kashrus because they're processing the sugar in the Philippines. Why did Hashem make that they should process the sugar in the Philippines? Why can't they process it in Nevada? So he should go to the Philippines. Why does he have to go to the Philippines? To check on the Jewish community there and see what kind of help that they need. It's a different perspective. It's a perspective of Hashgacha Pratis that is demanding of us. There's a sikha from the Rebbe, which again, we're sitting here together many weeks, many years, every week. I don't remember always which sikhas I've said and which sikhas I haven't said. But there's a sikha which had a very strong impact on me personally because it impacted my life and decisions in my life. Where the Rebbe brings down the Mishnah and the end of Masechtas Gittin, where it talks about grounds for divorce. Remember this? We spoke about this? No? There's a three-way machlokes about when a person is allowed to divorce his wife. What constitutes grounds for divorce? Beis Shammai says, "Iggeres adam es ishtay," a person should not divorce his wife, ella im kein matzaba ervas davar, unless she did something which is halachically inappropriate, and halachically he's not allowed to remain married to her. Beis Hillel says, that's Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel says that Beis Hillel is more lenient, and he says, nah, if your wife burns your supper intentionally so, that's grounds for divorce. That's abuse. Intentionally burning your supper, that's an abusive behavior. I would assume, although I haven't looked in all the mefarshim, I'm assuming that it probably means that there's a pattern of that. Not so, everyone's entitled to get angry once in a while, but but if that becomes what? Times. Sorry?
If she burns it multiple times.
I said if it becomes a pattern. If it becomes a pattern. And then famously Rabbi Akiva says, "Afilu matzah acheres no imenu." Grounds for divorce, you found a woman who's nicer than your wife, okay, you're allowed to divorce your wife.
Wait, what?
That's what Rabbi Kiva says. Now, it's interesting because in terms of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, we know that Beis Shammai is always strict and Beis Hillel is lenient, right? So it would make sense, right? Beis Shammai is more strict. You can only divorce your wife under very stringent circumstances. And Beis Hillel is more lenient. You're allowed to divorce your wife. But you think about it. Why is Beis Hillel lenient? Beis Hillel is lenient because he's chesed. Beis Shammai is lenient because he's gvura. Let me ask you, should chesed make it easier or harder to give a get?
Harder.
Chesed should make it harder. So Beis Hillel really should have been the strictest in this case because he's chesed. And chesed demands, gvura is, sure, give a get. Gvura is very strict.
Yeah.
Oh, you burnt my supper? Divorce, right? And Rabbi Kiva. The Gemara says about Rabbi Kiva, it's actually related to this week's parsha. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin, there's a machlokes about the Deir HaMidbar. Related to last week's parsha, also this week's parsha. Deir HaMidbar, do they have a chelik in Elam Haba? It's a machlokes. Rabbi Kiva says Deir HaMidbar doesn't have a chelik in Elam Haba. By the way, we're going from Indian to Indian. The Rebbe very often quoted for the Baal Asara Mamaris, a big Mekubal, who said that what does it mean, Ein lahem chelok le'elam haba? That they're so high that they're beyond Elam Haba. Elam Haba isn't even a schar for them. Which is the Rebbe's typical way of always positively spinning everything. But like upon him, Rabbi Kiva says, Ein lahem chelok le'elam haba. So the Gemara says, one of the Tanoim says, I think it was Rabbah, if I remember correctly, that Rabbi Kiva shafke l'chasidusei. That's it. This is it's uncharacteristic because Rabbi Kiva B'chlal and Rashi says that Rabbi Kiva is rogi l'zakui says Yisrael. Rabbi Kiva was someone who standardly he was being melamed schus on Yidden. And how is it that Rabbi Kiva who's a chosid and being someone who's mezakis Yisrael, he has such easy criteria for divorcing a wife? It doesn't make sense. So the Rebbe says, in order to understand this, really we have to look at what it means b'avodas Adam and avodas Hashem, because we know everything we learn. There's a deeper meaning. Ish ve'isha, man and woman, also represents, the ish is the person, and the isha, the woman, is chelkei ba'olam, is your portion in this world. Your shlichus in this world, that's your wife. Because you're the man is the mashpia, and the woman is the mekabel. So the part of the world that you're meant to influence, that you're meant to be mashpia to, is the wife. Now what happens if you have a certain shlichus in this world, and you want to move on to different shlichus?
What a promotion.
A different job, you want to move to a different place. You're a teacher, you want to become a rav. You're a rav, you want to become a teacher. You want to enter a different. You have a different shlichus, whatever it may be. You want to enter a different shlichus. Beis Shammai is very strict. Beis Shammai says, unless matzah ervas davar, unless halachically you cannot continue where you are. They're pashat. You're a rav in a shul, and they decided to take down the mechitza. Okay, there's nothing you can do. Matzah be'ervas davar. If your shlichus poses an issue in halacha, then you can leave. But otherwise, you can't leave. This is the shlichus hashgacha el yoina put this on you. The fact that you're there, again, this is the understanding of hashgacha prata is being obligating. The fact that you're in a certain place in a certain time and you have a certain mission, you can't stand. You can't pick up and leave, even if it's very difficult. Unless halacha, if halacha says that you can't, you can't. What's going to be with that portion of the world if you have to move away from it? So as the pasuk says, someone else will have to come and take care of the shlichus, but you can't. Beis Hillel is more lenient, and Beis Hillel says, no. I feel like if your shlichus is very, very difficult for you, and your shlichus it's becoming more and more difficult for you to. And it's supposing you promise, not halachic issue, but it's mamish, then you're entitled to go and you're allowed to leave your shlichus. Rabbi Kiva says no. If you find another shlichus that's more attractive to you, you're a Rebbe in yeshiva, but you found another shlichus that's becoming a fundraiser for, and you find it more attractive, you're allowed to do that. So now we understand how Beis Shammai is the strictest, and Beis Hillel is the most. Beis Shammai is the most gevura, and Beis Hillel is now the halacha is according to Beis Hillel. Halacha brought down in Shulchan Aruch is the ground for divorce is only hikdicha tafshili, which means in our words, that when are you allowed to leave a shlichus? If it's very difficult. You can't just leave a shlichus because another one's more attractive to you. Can't do that. The Rebbe is saying very clearly. If you're involved in one shlichus in this world, you can't just leave it because, I think I could do better elsewhere and I'll enjoy that more. That doesn't work. Unless it's really, really bothering you, you can't leave your shlichus. However, the Rebbe brings down from Poskim that says that even though the halacha is according to Beis Hillel, we should try to be machmer like Beis Shammai. Practically speaking, we should try. The Gemara says that kol ha'megaresh ishti rishona, whoever divorces his first wife, afilu the mizbeach, middle of the mois, even the mizbeach, weeps over this. Yeah, we try not to divorce. So even though the halacha, you're entitled to divorce your wife if it's hikdicha tavshilei like Beis Hillel, but l'poil we try to be machmer like Beis Shammai. And in fact, that it brings down that the Rambam says that even in the case where matzah ba'ervas davar still lo yimaher adam legarish ishtei rishena. Even if matzah ba'ervas davar, don't relax, look into it. Maybe you were wrong. Maybe you didn't. Maybe there wasn't. Maybe she didn't do something that was wrong. And the Rebbe is saying over here, you have a shlichus, whatever shlichus Hashem gave you, it's bashgacha pratis. Stick with it all the way till the end. That's what Hashem wants you to do, wherever you are. And once again, this is the understanding of Hashgacha Pratis dictating what you do in life. How does this connect to the Tanya that we were talking about? If I look at my life as serving Hashem, so therefore I have a job, and therefore I make money, and what's the purpose of that? I go to work in order to serve the Eibishter, in order to be able to give tzedakah. But who do I have to give tzedakah to? So here's Hashgacha Pratis answers that question for me. The first people are the people who are Hashgacha Pratis are related to me. They get first. This Hashgacha Pratis telling me what to do. What's the next thing we know? Ani ircha koidmen. Why ani ircha koidmen? Why are the poor people in my city more important than the poor people in Boston? My chos is the damach sumak tfei.
No one else will help them.
Sorry?
No one else will help them if the people in there.
Okay, so you're talking you're looking at it from a practical perspective. Practically speaking, a system will work best if everyone supports their own. But there's a deeper nakud over here. If Hashem wanted you to support the people in Boston,
you would be living there.
You'd live in Boston.
What are you doing over here?
Right. Why do you live here? Why did Hashem put you here? If you look at Hashgacha Pratis as demanding of you, the fact that I live here is Hashem's message to me that my tzedakah has to go here. By the way, when I say tzedakah, I mean my money has to go here. It means also my kiruv work has to go here. That means that I'm here because I have to influence my neighbors and my friends. But this is Hashgacha Pratis as being mechayiv, understanding that everything that I do is about the Eibishter, right? I'm here to serve the Eibishter. But if I'm here to serve the Eibishter, what should I do? Should I be a street cleaner? Should I be should I be a teacher? Should I be a fundraiser? Should I be a shliach? Should I be a shechet? Should I be a mil? Should I be, where should I live? Who should I give my money to? All these questions. And the answer to all of these is, the Eibishter put you in position, and Hashgacha Pratis answered all your questions. Look around you and you'll see how Hashem answered these questions. He put you in the position where you're meant to be and which you're meant to maximize. And this is one of the big messages of the Rebbe to us in our generation. Every single one of us is Hashgacha Pratis. We don't have to say, well, what do I have to do? Where do I have to go? Should I go here? Should I go there? No, you are where you're supposed to be. It's a matter of opening up your eyes, looking around you, finding the Yid who's next door to you, finding the Yid who's your neighbor. I heard from someone, says, that for Lubavitcher, for many years, going in a taxi was, many people, you go in a taxi, you sit back and you breathe for half an hour from the airport. Now, Lubavitcher is never so simple, because when you walk into the taxi, the first question you have to ask is, are you Jewish, right? And if the person is Jewish, then you're busy for half an hour during the ride. Talk to them about their mitzvahs. Hopefully, however, the person is going to answer no. And if the person answers no, so then you're potter. Then you have half an hour to sleep. Then came along the Rebbe in the 80s, Baruch Hashem, and the Rebbe said, no, we have to start speaking to Goyim about Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach. So suddenly it doesn't make a difference what that person answers. You're busy anyways. And if he says he's a Goy, you start telling him there's an Eibishter in the world, and he gave us, and he gave all humanity, he gave mitzvahs. But it's the perspective is that wherever I am, and what do I do, and whatever I'm doing is always what is needed of me and what is wanted of me, and the Hashgacha Pratis tells me what my mission is at this very moment.
I was once in a taxi, Rabbi, so I'm sure what you're saying is, might have still been a Bakar even, from release time, and he had a cross hanging from his mirror, from his rear view mirror in the middle. And I spoke all the way. I remember by the time we left, the cross was off. It wasn't hanging.
So that was your shlichus.
What
What did you convince him?
I don't know. Yeah. Whatever I said.
Good.
It was no cross hanging.